up guys? So what I'll be doing for today's vlog is summarizing the chapter 3, which is the network protocols and communications. So we have a flowchart. Control timing also affects how much information can be sent and the speed that it can be delivered. If one person speaks too quickly, it's difficult. In network communication, source and destination hosts use flowchart control methods to negotiate correct timing for successful communication. Second, response timeout. If a person asks a question and does not hear a response within an acceptable amount of time, the person assumes that no answer is coming and reacts according the person. So, the communication fundamentals. A network can be as complex as a device connected across in the internet or as simple as two computers directly connected to one another with a single cable. And anything between network can vary in size, shape, and function. However, simply having a wired or wireless physically connection between an device is not enough to enable communication to occur. Devices must know how to communicate. For example, consider two people communicating face to face as shown in figure 1. Prior to communicating, they must agree on how to communicate. If the communication is using voice, they must first agree on the language. Next, when they have a message to share, they must be able to format that message in a way that is understandable. For example, if someone uses the English language but poor sentence structure, the message can easily be misunderstood. So, before communicating with one another, individuals must use established rules or arguments to govern the conversions. For example, consider figure 1 protocol are necessary for effective communication. Those rule or protocols must be followed order for the message be successfully delivered and understood. Protocols must account for the following requirements. So, undefined sender and receiver, common language and grammar, speed, timing or delivery, confirmation, acknowledgement, requirements. The protocols that are used in network communications share many of these fundamental traits. In addition to identify the source and destination, computer and network protocols define the details of how a message is transmitted across a network. Common computer protocols include the requirements shown figure shown. Message encoding. One of the first steps to sending a message is encoding. Encoding is the process converting information into another acceptable form for transmission. Decoding reverses this process in order to interpret the information. Encoding also occurs in computer communication as shown in between hosts must be an appropriate format for the medium. So, message sent across the network and first converted into bits by the sending host. Each bit is encoded into a pattern of sounds, light waves or electrical impulses depending on the network media over which bits are transmitted. So the destination host receives and decodes the signals in order to interpret the message. So we have a message size. Another rule of communication is size. When people communicate with each other, the message that they send are usually broken into smaller parts of sentences. These sentences are limited in size to what the receiving person can process at one time. An individual conversion may be made up of many smaller sentences to ensure that each part of the message is received understood. Each part of the message received. Imagine what it would be like to read the course if all appeared as one long sentence. It would not be easy no to read and comprehend. Likewise, when a long message is sent from the host to another over a network, it's necessary to break the message into smaller pieces as shown. The rules that govern the size of the pieces or frames communicated across the network vary strict. They can also be different depending on the channel. Use frames that are too long or too short to deliver. So response timeout. If a person asks a question and does not hear a response within an acceptable amount of time, the person assumes that no answer is coming and reacts accordingly. The person may repeat the question or may go on with the conversion. Host the network also have rules. These specify how long to wait for responses and what action to take if response time occurs. So another example, HTTP is an application protocol that governs the way a web server and a web client interact. HTTP defines the content and formatting of the requests and responses that are exchanged between the client and server. Both the client and the web server software implements HTTP as part of the application. HTTP relies on the protocols to govern how the message transport between the client and server. The second is TCP. TCP is the transport protocol that manages the individual conversions. TCP divides the HTTP message into smaller pieces called segments. These segments are sent between the web server and client processes running at the destination host. TCP is also responsible for controlling the size and rate at which messages are exchanged between the server and client. TCP. TCP is the transport protocol that manages the individual conversions. TCP divides HTTP. Second is IP, is responsible for taking the formatted segments from TCP, encapsulating them to packets, assigning them and the appropriate addresses and delivering them to destination host. So the Ethernet. Ethernet is a network access protocol that describes two primary functions: communication over the data link and the physical transmission of data on the network media. Network access protocols are responsible for taking the packets from IP and formatting them to be transmitted over the media. Protocol suites and industry standards. A protocol suite is a set of protocols that network together to provide comprehensive network communication service. A protocol suite may be specified by a standards organization or developed by a vendor. Protocol suites, like the shown in the figure, can be a bit overwhelming. However, this course will over the protocols of the TCP and IP protocol suite. The TCP protocol suite is an open standard, meaning these protocols are freely available to the public and any vendor is able to implement the protocols on their hardware or in their software. A standards-based protocol is a process that has been endorsed by the networking industry and approved by standards organization. The use standards in developing and implementing protocols ensures the products from different manufacturers can interpret successfully. So that's all for today's guys. Thank you.